Yes, hi, Terrence. Yasser Ali, Polymer. We do data privacy as a service, so API that integrates with databases, chat services, and applications to automatically mask and redact PII data.
And Lucida?
Hi, I'm Lucida with the main tab. We are a luxury wholesale marketplace connecting high-end brands with independent retailers.
John?
Hi, John Cottingham, Roots Automation. We build digital coworkers that self-learn to automate rules-based business processes.
Rob and/or Austin?
Yeah, Rob Van Haren, CTO of Profit.ai. We do machine learning solutions for tax, and we have our customers communicate to us with the Drift app.
That's right.
I love it. Perfect way to round it out. All right, cool. So that's who we have. Yes, Terrence, all set. As we have online right now, like I said, we have folks coming in from different time zones, so it might take them a second to get on, but there'll be no noises when they join, which is great. So excited. I'm personally excited, obviously, to make this intro. Elias, as someone who came from the Boston ecosystem, yours and David's and the whole crew's names have been shared around a lot. So I was pumped to have you involved. Really briefly, I'm sure all of you guys already know, but obviously Elias is the CTO and co-founder of Drift, conversational marketing and sales platform. Fun fact, their office used to be right across the street from my old office, and I used to wave at my friends who worked in their office. So soft spot in my heart for the team. Yeah, so hopefully Elias can give us a little bit of a background on starting the company and kind of what that experience has been like. Like I said, this is actually our last session before the founders go into what we affectionately refer to as Investor Week, which is kind of like our investing portion of the program. And given the times, I'm sure there's a lot of input and thoughts to share on that front. So just for some perspective, it's been nearly 4 months of building their B2B SaaS businesses. So I'm sure folks are excited to hear the story. And then from there, we'll go into just kind of a live Q&A. Folks hopefully are prepared with a couple questions, and I'm sure more will come up. Perfect. And without further ado, I'll hand it over.
15, 30, 20 minutes to say something like this in here, right? So yeah, I got some notes here on, you're about to present. I'm gonna try to put myself in your shoes, right? You're about to present for fundraising, right? And so you're kind of revealing to the world what you've been thinking. So I'll give you an example, right? We left HubSpot and we start working on Drift, and we don't know exactly what we're going to do, right? So we lived for about almost 2 years. You spend 4 months, we spend 2 years trying different ideas in our minds and trying to build prototypes, trying to figure out if we had fallen in love with what we were doing, right? And so it's a very difficult thing, and what I'm trying to say to you is I understand, right? It's like to be able to give that one-liner with confidence and to say, this is what we do and this is what we solve, is nerve-wracking, right? Because you're kind of like, have to show everybody that you believe in it. You have to prove to them that it's a good idea. And it affects you as an individual to your core, right? It's like everything, your reputation, your credit, everything that affects an entrepreneur, it's all like bottled in that one story. It's like, is that really what you're working on? You know, I'm sure there's a lot of questions that are running through your mind, right? That you have fears, like, is that what you're thinking? Is that big enough? Or you're crazy, or you're not gonna be able to do that. That's too big of a problem. There's too many competitors in this space, right? There's all this kind of stuff that you're gonna get bombarded with. How many of those questions resonate? Have you gotten any of those yet? Got it, right? Which is the big one? Which is the biggest concern that you guys get right now?
How are you going to scale it up? What are the challenges? Why you? Those kind of things. Yeah.
Exactly, right? And so, so when we were, the first thing that we launched, if you if you want to hear a struggle, was this thing called Annotate. So Drift built a mobile app that literally, like if you use an iPhone now, you know when you take a screenshot, you have the ability to scribble over it, right? And then you send it, and you send it forward. So that didn't exist in iOS about 4 years ago. We built that, and we're building an app that we launched on the App Store. And we were saying that, and everybody was like, oh my God, this is so useful. You can annotate this and you can send it. And it's like, and we're like, imagine us trying to come up with a story that says why that was like $1 billion idea, right? A $10 billion idea. And we launched it to the public, and that was a struggle, right? Because everybody's like, that's what David and you are working on. And so, you know, what are the lessons learned with that? It's like, it's about pride, right? It's about trying to be impressive, try to show all the time great things. And then sometimes you got to put out there, and people are going to laugh at you, right? They're going to say, that's what you're building. And that can't stop you, right? So that was one of my early struggles there, launching Annotate and charging $99 on the App Store and like showing people. I mean, we were doing crazy stuff. We were going and talking to people at Starbucks, showing the app, hoping for people to spread the word, and we were monitoring the app usage on the store and figure out how many active users we were having every week, and seeing like, how do we scale that to be a B2C company, and how are we going to scale that to be millions and millions in revenue. Wow, that was hard, very hard for us, right? So you think that Drift was completely different, right? You would think, right? When we did the pivot, right? And you guys say, well, look at Drift now, right? It's like, $1 billion idea. Well, guess what? When we decided to build Drift, we go and release it. You know, we kind of pivoted, which, by the way, pivoting is a really good thing to do. You know, there's nothing wrong, right? This is something, another warning. One of you in here, I guarantee you, will pivot from the one-line idea that you have, the elevator pitch. What you end up doing, what you end up fundraising on it, or what you end up actually settling after you fundraise might be different than what you're doing today, right? It's just the way of the business. And pivots are very important because it shows that you're learning. It shows that you're validating or invalidating hypothesis, right? You can't expect that you knew it all along, that you had the right idea from the very beginning. Almost nothing ever really is like that perfect. No one has that perfect foresight to say, oh, this is the problem and this is the largest marketplace. You kind of stumble upon it. You might be even doing micro pivots in your journey on a day-to-day basis. You might hear in a conversation some idea, some suggestion that makes you think differently, or like maybe puts you into a different segment, different buyer, different industry, different size of the industry, different geography. And that's enough to propel you into a pivot that could make or break your company, right? And so that's something that we did when we were launching Annotate. When we launched it, we started realizing the struggle that was to communicate with our customers, with our users, and how to acquire new customers. And we realized that was a bigger problem than the drawing, right? And eventually we saw things in the beta and the iOS where that was coming in and that we were going to get crushed. And so we that's another thing that forces you to do a pivot, right? And so we do a pivot, and we have an offsite. By the way, that's an important thing. I used to hate offsites. I used to be like, what are these offsites? Like, you put sticky notes on the walls and you brainstorm and you do trust falls. It was too much Silicon Valley for me. Like, I was like, that's crazy. But now I'm a big believer in them, right? To really take yourself out of that day-to-day, the same environment that you are, Ideally, invite someone outside of your company to help you both facilitate or help you think differently. That prepares the plans so you're not stuck in the weeds organizing that. And so we had a 3-person offsite where we went with one of our advisors and we locked ourselves for almost 2 days. And that's really where we made the pivot from Annotate, which was one of our last experiments, into Drift as you see today. And from December to April, we launched Chat and we launched Drift, right? Kind of very similar to what you see today. Same target customer base, same problem, same need in the market. And you think everybody was like, yeah, this is awesome? You think everybody got it when we launched that? What do you guys think? Raise your hand if you think everybody saw it. No, right? It's like, it was just as, people were like, this is stupid, right? It's like, how many thousands of chat providers exist out there that do the same thing? Like what you said, Yasir, right? It's like, why are you going to make this better? Why are you going to make different? How are you going to solve this, right? And so we then had another hill to climb, right? Of like being able to communicate, differentiate, find a niche, a wedge in the market, a beachhead to start with, right? And to resegment the market, ultimately to create a category, right? And so like that's what everybody wants. So everybody wants to create a category. So you have to, as you are moving towards this Investors Day, right? You have to tell a compelling story, right? And you have to tell both how is it a big problem and how is it believable that you can accomplish that, right? But then you have to tell it, to make it believable, you have to pick that beachhead, right? And so what is Drift's beachhead at the time? One is that we repurposed Chat that was formerly more only known for support, right? And we said that we were gonna make Chat for sales. People were not doing that, if you believe it or not. Like people was like, no, you don't, no. We tried, the CROs and the marketers would tell us, we tried that before. We do not have the manpower to man chats and to do stuff with it. It's too much effort. It doesn't work. We don't want to use that, right? And so that's what Drift 4 years ago encountered, right? And we had to change that. And so our beachhead was B2B tech, marketers, SaaS. Pick one group of people, not every industry, and go make sure that we heard them and their challenges, and that we built a solution that no one else was paying attention to. None of the chat companies were saying, what does the marketer needs in a chat solution on a web page, right? So that was the beachhead, that was the niche that we found. You had to make a compelling story for something very big. And we said, always go and draw from the market, right? For example, from society, from the civilization, we went and showed the stats that said how many people had shifted to text messaging, right? It's like grandparents are now texting, they're online. Today now, another big shift in the market happened with COVID, right? Everybody's on Zoom. Before this, it was only, 10 million people were on Zoom. Now it's how many? It's over 200, right? People did not know what Zoom was until a month ago. The same was with messaging. And so that's the things that you tag along. You want to tag along mega trends that are happening in the world that will justify a massive outcome that you can then ride upon. Because you alone, when you're starting a company this small, are not capable of creating that wave, right? And so one of the things you're going to learn in startups is that you better go right. You better go find your wave and you go ride that wave. And the timing has to be perfect, right? If your timing is not perfect, if you're too early, I don't know how many of you surf, right? But if you're too early, it passes you by. You don't even feel it. And you saw it ahead of everybody else, but you're not riding it. If you're too late, you're gonna get crushed, right? And so that's kind of what happened. So I think that for us, it was understanding that wave. The wave was messaging. Then it's like we repurposed. We found our beachhead, which was grab chat for sales, where nobody else was there before. We went and did that, and then we explained the huge market opportunity, right? That we had, because if you can't go to the investors if you don't show something that is like really, really big, and you have to be ambitious, right? It's like if you're not speaking in believable terms of a huge opportunity, then not, right? And so I think that that's an area where category definition kicks in, right? Is that the way that you win in most cases, to me, is by changing the playing field, right? I changed the game to my advantage, so we win. I didn't want to be the best chat tool just for sake of being the best chat tool. I don't know. WhatsApp is better. I don't know, Messenger. Like we couldn't compete with that, right? The amount of engineers back in Facebook Messenger is a whole nother level. But none of those cared about messaging for sales. None of them care about B2B messaging for sale. Apple launched a chat, right? And it was for business. It's still more for the consumer. It's not more for B2B. And so those are the areas where you have to find, those are the ways that you can use to validate a beachhead, right? And when we launched, we took it easy. Something that we do, I think it's as we launch new products at Drift, we kind of follow the same pattern, which is, first we have to find product market fit, right? We launch something, we have to launch it as soon as possible. You have to charge as soon as possible. It's like if you launch something right now and you're gonna go on stage and say like, hey, look, I have this customers, and none of them are paying, it's not gonna be good, right? You want to be able to go on stage and say you have a paying customer, even if they pay you very little. It's okay. The first customers at Drift, they were paying us $25 a month. Many customers paying us over $100,000 a year. Look at that, how crazy that is, that in 3 years, we went from $25 to over $100,000 for a brand new contract, right? And so that is something that very few companies can do that quickly, right? Either you start at end or you start at the bottom, and then you start at the bottom, you can't move up that high. So, but having a paying customer to start with is better than not having any. And so you want that product market fit to be validated by paying customers. And then, but to get to paying, what we did is, for example, it took us about 3 quarters to get to paying at Drift, right? The first quarter, we focused on people signing up for Drift. All we care about it was people signing up, finding us, being able to sign up. You just have a process to sign up and want to sign up. We were so excited, I still remember, like, we were at Canal Park at the office across over there at Leachmere, and it was the first 2 or 3 websites that we went to their site and saw them installing Drift, and it was like unbelievable, right? It's like, and so we set our goal to have 1,000 installs for the quarter, and we surpassed that. We ended up doing over 2,000 that quarter, which things that felt unbelievable. So my advice there is to focus on one thing, focus on one goal. And it was like, all we cared about was signups. We didn't care about anything else. We didn't care what they did. It's just if they put their name on it and they sort of tried to put the widget on their website, that was more than enough. Go for it. Once we overcame that goal, then the next step was activation. Are they actually using your product? Get more people to use the product, even if they fell through on the onboarding, right? And so we were focused on contacting every person that signed up, why they didn't get it on their website, what stopped them, what was the roadblock, what was missing. And that was the second quarter. And then the third quarter is when we put the billing, right? But in just 3 quarters, we had 500 paying customers and we had reached about 300K in recurring revenue. And shy, we had a goal of $1 million for the first 3 quarters. But that's the other thing, is that you got to just set ambitious goals, right? And the goal was like, after experimenting for 2 years, we said, shoot, we got to go and we got to get people using the product, and we have to have enough value for us to charge them something. And that was like how we got the basics foundation of Drift, right? We have a problem, we committed, we launched it, we got people to use it, activate it, and then pay for it. Then it was a matter of expansion. How do we solve more problems for the customers? How do we generate more value for them that they're willing to pay us more? So that's on the, I think there's a good stuff on the early story of Drift. Let me see, what else?
Can I ask you a question before we move to the next session? I'm just curious to hear from you. To what extent do you believe the integrations with other softwares is critical, and at what stages in your company is that important? Was it important right from the get-go, or were these integrations only critical once you've started expanding more rapidly within your with sales?
It's a great question. 2 parts to that. My answer would be is that, one, you really have to have mastery over the problem that you're solving. And it's like, if you're not solving the right problem for the customer, it doesn't matter what you integrate with. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so I'll give you a concrete example today. Drift is a very unique product because we show you in Drift, when a customer installs Drift and they use Salesforce, we show you how many emails, how many leads you collected to Drift that we put into Salesforce for you. Then we show you how many opportunities are open in flight right now that we influence by allowing more conversations to be attached to those opportunities. Then we have the dollar value of opportunities, and then we have the dollar value of close won, how many new customers you won. And so like the ROI that we are presenting to our customers is right there. It's so clear. We're directly influencing the bottom line of our customers. That's an incredible situation that we're in, that you should always think about. Whatever it is that you're building, if you can embed ROI into your product, find a way for it to show it, right? So that's lesson number 1. However, I would say the problem is, how do you value Drift's influence over your bottom line? It's not really about the integration. Some customers might not have Salesforce. Some customers might not allow us to connect to Salesforce. Some customers calculate things differently, right? And so the problem that we're trying to solve is like, how do we influence? What is the language and the definition and the agreement between us and our customers? It's not necessarily the integration, right? Because we could actually solve that in different ways, as long as we truly understand the problem, right? So that's why I'm saying like it's like the integration is a nice to have. You got to focus on your problem first. If you don't understand your problem, you're not going to be able to build a great company. Now, I'll give you the opposite view. Sometimes integrations are good because you can ride on them for growth, for signups, for activations, right? You can leverage other people's platforms, right? For example, Klaviyo, I always get confused, is a great company in Boston, right? Amazing company. They are a complement to e-commerce stores across many platforms, but Shopify is the one that really helped them explode. In our case, for us early on, we launched Drift. We made an integration with Slack. Slack was really hot, right? We're talking about 2015, 2016. And so what happened was that we made an integration, and not a lot of people had those integrations. And that brought a lot of those Slack customers, and they would buy or they would sign up for Drift because he worked with Slack. And so that got us a lot of attention. That to this day is still good, because we just made another release recently, and the Slack team comes to us and says, like, look, we want to highlight you, right? So all those things from a marketing perspective, from a customer acquisition, it's a really good thing to do. So you kind of have to just be really smart about those integrations. If it's super critical, this would be the third point on it. You have to be careful, because if you depend on a platform for the livelihood of your company, it's too much at risk, and that's going to affect the way the investors see you, right? The more standalone that you can be, the better. When we were building Annotate, we depended on Apple. We depended on the Apple Store. It's their phone. They had all the advantages, right? We could never win that battle. And so what we like about Drift is that we can run our own systems. We can directly onboard our customers. They run it on their website. And we don't depend on Facebook Messenger. We don't depend on WhatsApp. We don't depend on Facebook or Apple. We are completely standalone. So you want to balance those things. You want to use them for customer acquisition. You want to use them for marketing. But you want to be as a standalone of a solution to a very specific problem as possible.
A quick follow-up on that point. When it gets to really technical pieces like natural language processing and the ML, data science, AI world, how much are you tapping into what's in the ecosystem, what's out there, and how much are you spending money to develop those pieces, the natural language processing, understanding, generation pieces yourself?
So I am a big, my experience, my background is more entrepreneurial. I'm a CS graduate and so forth, but it's not, my expertise, my value is in gluing things together, not necessarily creating things from scratch, right? And so there are some companies that are built around a specific technology that they built that no one else has, but like completely core, like a neural network, right? There's so very few of those. Everyone is always kind of building on others, right? And so I'll give you an example. For us, as much as I wanted Drift to be AI based, because my previous company, we didn't have any of that, right? It was like, I was thinking like, oh, this company's gonna be all AI. Well, guess what? I didn't have customers, I didn't have data. So I couldn't go focus on AI if I didn't have a real problem to solve. So first we had to get customers, got to get a lot of data. And now I have that. And the way I did it is I did it through an acquisition, right? We bought a company here in Boston out of MIT that they had worked for many, many years. And they built their own tech in a way, but it's also a complex solution that doesn't easily come together. Mm-hmm. And so it's proprietary, it's defensible, it's not easy. And it just doesn't exist out there. Like what mostly you have out there is loose tools, right? Loosely decoupled tools. Like you have something that can parse a sentence. You have something that can extract entities. You can have something that can detect language, detect, numbers, amounts, this. But to put that together into a conversational AI platform, it's not trivial yet, And so we have an advantage by building a platform, but this is work that took, years in the making. I mean, it took him at least 10 years, including his PhD thesis, plus as well as the work that he had as his startup. And so there are amazing things out there, but the reality is that you still have to put them together to solve a specific problem. Like for example, like there is IBM Watson, there's Google Duplex, and those tools are out of your reach, out of most of our companies, our customers, out of their reach to buy and to deploy in a feasible time frame. Drift today has an AI solution we call qualification bot powered by automation, where we can actually train an AI bot on as many conversations as you have with customers, and we can grab those for your company, just your company, so that our bot speaks the way that your reps spoke to the customers. And so that is a complex solution, and we know how to do that very quickly. Within a month to 3 months, we can have that bot responding 85% of the time correctly, right? But that took somebody else's that we brought through an acquisition. Not an easy thing to replicate.
That's helpful, thanks.
5:30, this is still 6?
Yeah, we have till 6.
Okay, so I can take more questions, or I can talk about different things. I talked about the beginning. I can talk about Drift today and challenges, right? We talk rituals, what the company is like. I just don't know if you guys want to hear like 400-person company problems right now.
I definitely, I mean, not as a founder, but just out of interest, right now, given everything that's going on, whether it's from the perspective of being a 400-person company or putting yourself, you know, in the shoes of yourself way back when, what are your general, and it's not a super clear question, but like, what are your general thoughts on what's happening right now and how, as a software company, you're meant to react in this kind of an ecosystem? And I think you're an angel investor yourself. And so, you know, when looking at companies, what is it that you're expecting to see in the situation like this?
So, a couple of stories there, right? I read something that I think Pat, one of my board members from Sequoia, put out there. It says that if you never experienced a downturn, go have coffee with someone that has experienced a downturn before, right? I would say I've experienced 3 downturns, right? I would say one is me as a young person in Nicaragua, growing up in a communist country where I lived under food rationing and very, very poor, very little resources. I mean, not like, what is it, like, not poverty levels, right? Not like I wasn't like on the street, but compared to, I mean, it's like we lived in a barred home. We had limited amount of food that we would get by a communist, you know, Russian influenced government. I got dengue. So it's like this pandemic stuff. It's like, I experienced a lot of this stuff growing up. So like what I'm experiencing now is like, I'm in a much better situation now than when I was experiencing those issues there. Maybe they were not affecting the whole world, but they were affecting my whole country, right? So I would say like that category is one, that whole group of experiences. The second was the 2000, right, Y2K, and seeing the crash and me, you know, just recently graduated, being newlywed, living in moved from Florida to the Northeast, more expensive living, cost of living, and I was like you know, I was 1 foot on a startup, 1 foot at IBM, trying to juggle that and experiencing what I saw in the companies, and not enough jobs out there, not enough companies hiring. So that was my second. And then my third one was 2008, which was, I quit IBM after 10 years. 3 kids at home. You'll probably see them walk back and forth. I don't know. Got 3 kids now. They're teenagers now. But I have 3 kids, ages 4, 2, and 1. And I quit IBM, and my spouse, my wife, is at home with us, and I'm working from home. And I'm every day in my bedroom with a desk working with David on our first company called Lookery. And as soon as I quit, 2 weeks later, the market crashes. And we are 10 people in that company, and we lay off 5 of them. And now I'm working at this company with 5 people, not a lot in funding, not a lot in revenue. And we have to buckle down, and I work day and night out of this bedroom, right? It's like, this is the experience. And so that was with David already. And so we not only did that crash, but then we went and started Performable still during that recession, right? That depression, whichever one that is. And in there, I learned of the value of being able to fundraise in a downturn, right? Which is like, if you guys get money right now, you're going to be in a very privileged spot, and you're going to have an amazing opportunity. Don't waste it, right? Because not everyone you're not in a place of like super abundance, right? Where everybody can like compete against everybody and waste their money. By you getting that will give you an advantage that many other people just won't be able to even start.
Wait, did you guys fundraise on traction? Was it vision? Like what was it that closed the investment during that crash?
David.
Yeah. So I'm probably a mix of like a lot of the story, and I know Dave is definitely, from what I've seen him speak, is like a lot of the storytelling side of things.
Yeah. No, but it's David's reputation, right? So you invest, sure. You go and CRV invested in Performable because they had invested in Compete, his prior company that sold to WPP, right? Mm-hmm. So they knew him, right? And so what you do is that you find co-founders that are known, they have more experience, that sold companies that do that stuff. You do that's going to increase your chances of the team. You can recruit someone like that. It's going to be more valuable than many other things right now in the fundraising process, right? And so that's the other thing. It's like right now it's going to create a lot of people out there that won't have the opportunities and the jobs, but they might have done something great before, right? And they might be in transition. So that would be an important thing to do. It has helped me a ton, right, to be with David. So we raised money in 2009, and there was not a lot of companies in that were competing against us, right?
When after you fundraised, what was the focus on? Like, was it just survive and like raise the money, spend as little of it as possible and survive? Or how did you serve a group of clientele who were holding money so close to the chest?
Yeah, I guess maybe David, I don't know, David is scrappy and frugal, right? It's just like, but that's kind of like how we're both, immigrants, son of immigrants, right? And it's like never been wasteful in our resources. So just think about it, like, we raise money, we have $3 million, but we don't know how long that lasts. We don't know how much revenue we get. And in about a year and 9 months in the existence, we reach $1 million in ARR at Performable, which what put us on the map and made us very attractive to HubSpot, right, for the acquisition. And so I would say that, yeah, we were absolutely penny pinchers. There was every dollar had to go, like, for every hire had to matter. Everything, was like, where do we do an office? We were renting in Amesbury, Massachusetts, which was like $1 per square foot, right? And it was like a 1,500 square foot office, right? And it's like, we would go buy computers together. I mean, we just kept everything very minimal. We bought a couple of desks at IKEA. I mean, it's like very minimal because we didn't know how long that was going to last and how long it was going to take for the economy to turn. And so now back to today, the big thing that you have to deal with this is what kind of pivot you have to make as a company to be different, right? At that time, we felt that the problem that we were solving, it was pretty clear. We needed to do that. We were kind of inventing really online marketing, right? This was the days where at Performable, because there was no growth marketing, there was no nurture emails, there was no sequences, none of that stuff was easily doable, right? You kind of had to cobble that stuff together And only very few people knew how to do that by hand. And so we knew we were on the right path from a technology perspective. Now, if you're stuck in this, you have to understand, is what you're building a painkiller, a luxury, right? Or a painkiller or a vitamin, right? You have to decide, how do customers see you? When the economy hits the bottom, do they go and cut budget? Would you get cut first, right? And so that's the first thing. The other is like what kind of industry you're in, period, right? So like if you're in the restaurant industry, if you're in the travel, you're in the hospitality, all those are getting crushed, and you have no choice. The amount of pivoting that you have to do in that one is extraordinary. I don't even want to think about it right now. I have enough on my hands with what we have. Where we are today is that we're validating something that I always wanted to, right? Which is our product is more necessary now than ever, right? Because businesses are like, don't have as much staff. They rely all on digital. People are coming to their website. They need to maximize every prospect, every person knocking on their door, on their website, to make sure that they connect them to help them find and realize the value that their product provides. And so it's like, great, we have to be operationally excellent to make sure that we optimize in these times, because no matter what, the purses are going to be tight, right? People are not just buying everything all the time, right? Only like the most essential things. And so that's kind of where we are. We're validating that. We are very hopeful. We're very excited. And we know that the best companies are the ones that emerge from this. And so you guys, starting a company now, it's fantastic, right? Because the lessons you're going to have, the scrappiness, the financially conservative skills, the focus on profitability as opposed to just growth, will create a great business that you want to make it unkillable, right? Unkillable means, you get to 50, 100 people that pay for themselves, then you're unstoppable, right? Then you're always going to attract investors no matter what. You're always going to do that. If you build that kind of business, it's much better than building a business just on hype and momentum and marketing or brand or some partnership, right? Profitability is still the true way of building a business. And that's really something that we've been focusing on. Like, how far would we be from profitability if we focus on that? Cost saving, Amazon, expenses, ability to scale more customers with the same amount of people. Those are the kinds of things that we're thinking. And so given that I've experienced this before, I'm hopeful. I think that I'm extremely privileged that I can be here at home, working from here and still making a lot of progress in our company. I'm worried about the rest of society. Something I'm doing right now is that compared to the days where I couldn't afford food, or I had like 3 months of savings in 2008, one of the things that I've done right now, first time I'm saying this, is like, I'm so far I already given March, April, and I'm gonna do May. I'm doing my 100% of my salary, right, to help the communities through nonprofits of Latinx founded Latinx communities, right, that are struggling because they don't have the kind of jobs that I have now, right? And so those are the things that I'm able to do now. I'm in a better position. So I'm worried about that in certain extent, but I'm also worried about my company to survive this and to come out stronger than ever, because the next part of our stages of growth is to go towards an IPO. And the more efficient that we are, the more successful, the more accurate are we like defining the value that we provide to our customers, the better. Right? So long answers.
Can I lean into something you said earlier, Elias? Sorry, I came in late. We're building a product to help companies go remote, so providing the tools workers need at home. So just something you said about predicting the future. So you guys obviously lent heavily into marketing from a sales perspective. And I think it's like there's something interesting around both predicting the future, but then how do you paint that bigger vision to the people, both the clients that you're selling to and the investors that you're obviously trying to raise money from? So I think, do you lean into the story, or do you lean into this is how big the market could be and this is how we're going to attack that segment?
Yeah, first you have to identify the future, right? And it's like, you probably were earlier than this, right? You were thinking about remote before COVID happened. I don't know, right? This is the wave analogy. Did you hear me when I was talking about the wave?
Yeah.
It's like you know, question is where are you in that timing of the wave? Because now everybody wants to do remote tools, right? So catching the right wave, having the right timing, having a big TAM, being able to tell the story. Now I think you have to figure out, can you really create a category? I don't know, the category is remote collaboration. So you're gonna have to figure out what is your beachhead that you have, that you see it, that is different than everybody else. Because there's a million remote collaboration tools right now, springing out of everywhere, right? And so, so the question is like, category might be too big. What is your beachhead? I think the TAM is pretty clear now. I think that the space, the trend, the wave is here, is breaking. I don't know, did it break already? It's so close, right? You gotta move very, very fast and say, how are you different? How will you, maybe you're gonna have to figure out is like, how do you charge for it, right? Why are people gonna pay you? You're gonna have to differentiate from a lot of other tools that are not charging yet, right?
Yeah, I think for us, we're sort of focused on the physical element of remote work. So I think it's interesting that you guys took a very different approach to sort of say, okay, well, there's a lot of people building this half of messaging. I think we're trying to do the same thing with remote work, where there's a lot of people building to one half of this. But I think, yeah, to your point, like just being able to differentiate and being able to say, well, this is why we're different. I guess you guys done that super successfully, but was there anything specifically that you lent on to do that, if that makes sense?
It's what I say, like it's changing the rules of the game, the playing field, right? If like nobody was selling to sales chat, right? We're like, let's go there. And so if nobody's doing, I like the sound of that, right? You're talking about physical, right? It's like everybody's doing online stuff. What are you doing if there's not a lot of people in there? You know, I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert in that space, right? But if it's like physical sounds interesting. Oh, what are you doing with that? That is not just another way of chatting or just Clubhouse or just hanging out or whatever, right? But it's like, I'm gonna help you with your home and this, and I got delivery, and you're gonna buy goods, and everybody needs it, and this is the budget that people are allocating. Companies can be providing this as a benefit, and we deliver, you know, change the work experience, blah, 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 whatever it is, right? Not a lot of people may be saying that, so maybe you're onto something, right?
Question on going back to the enterprise, well, I'm going back to enterprise purchasing. So like nearly everybody on the call is selling into an organization the size of Drift, just winking and nudging at the founders. But what are you guys what are you guys prioritizing right now? I'm assuming there's been conversations about like cutting costs and saving money and, you know, where you're putting your energy. Like,
don't spend any money right now.
Yeah, I figured. So yeah, I mean, like, I just out of interest, it's just as a corporate purchaser, like, is that it? Is it just like full stop on spending? And like, as yourselves, as, you know, people who are building a software for enterprises and SMBs, how do you approach that as a company that's not buying, but is trying to sell?
Okay, maybe a suggestion I have here is that, I don't know, but SMB doesn't do well in these situations. Like, I would consider not, so like every company has this battle, SMB or enterprise. I'm gonna try to simplify. I'm not gonna talk about the mid-market or verticals, right? But it's like, SMB is like very few companies are extremely successful at SMB. HubSpot is one of them, right? It takes a long time. It's a lot of effort, a lot of churn, not a lot of value, not a lot of charge. It's not gonna pay you a lot of money per customer. And they come and go with the failure rate of SMB is just so high that you got to be careful if you're going to pitch that right now to people, because SMBs are getting decimated right now by this pandemic, by this economic collapse. And so what I see is I see our enterprise customers, our larger customers, those are much more stable, larger budgets, problems. They know that they're going to have to bounce back from this. They're going to invest in customer acquisition, things like that, right? And so it's very important. And Drift has been, we only been selling for 3 years, but now we're really shifting into the enterprise. We just, hire a new CRO and like understanding the true definition of enterprise selling. I think that that's something you have to consider as part of your pitch, right? It's like, who are you selling? Who is your target? You gotta describe the persona of your buyer, right? And say what kind of company and what kind of price they pay. Who else do they pay today? There's a big difference between doing remote solutions in the physical world for solo entrepreneurs or for the solo industry, which is like 50% of the United States. You're trying to go for that large number of people, individual buyers, or do you go to a company and say, how do you help them transition to offline, to remote work, and how you're going to affect the physical? It's like, it's like, I don't know, right? I'm right now, my mind is all things about enterprise.
Yeah, that makes sense.
When you were, this has been great, Elias. When you were doing the fundraising, one of the questions that's coming up is how you're going to acquire the first $3 million in revenue, and what is your wedge going to be initially and stuff.
How many? 2 or 1?
What's that?
2 or 1?
2, or whatever it might be, right? So your experience in that, in terms of telling a convincing story that this is, because a lot of stuff is like A/B testing, ABC testing, initial phases. You kind of know before the product market fit, the experiments you need to run and the runway you need to be able to ascertain what works, what doesn't. But you have enough data to say that there's a good probability one of them would work, or whatever the course you're taking. How did you kind of cross that chasm in terms of selling the story and actually doing it when you actually got the initial funding, and how do you think about that?
Like I said, we had reputation, we had network, we had trust, right? And so it's very difficult, but to compare us with other situations. I just did today a webinar with Manny on an interview, Manny Medina, CEO of Outreach, where he built everything from scratch, right? Asking for the first $5,000, $10,000. We raised $15 million without just David and I coming out of HubSpot, right? And so it's not the same, but I would say that I think that you need to be able to get money without any revenue or with very little revenue. It's like, there's no other, you know what I mean? It's like, unless you fund it yourself. So there are many ways to get money in that early stage. And so you have to, what I'm trying to say is that the context is you need to have some money to go towards that $1 million in revenue. Because you need to have at least one salesperson, one engineer, one marketer, you and a co-founder and a sales, something like somebody has to help you sell it. And so I think that the amount doesn't matter as much. What matters is that you're closing 1, 2, 3 customers. Because remember what I said, we had 500 customers at $25. If I did the math of how many it was going to take to get to $1 million, it's just hard, right? And so what's easier is just to increase the value, right? And so you can in recurring revenue. So I think that everybody, these tricks that you can say, it's like if you sold something for $10,000 a year, you can say, look, if I had a better sales rep, I could sell that for 25. And that's better than having to market a whole bunch of stuff, right? As long as you can show success with customers, right? As long as you can show that they're not churning, right? As long as you can show those things, you can extrapolate the rest. And it's all going to be appropriate to your stage. If somebody's going to find a problem, if you made $2 million in revenue, but they're all churning, it doesn't matter, right? It's like, I'd rather have less churn and less revenue than more revenue and higher churn, right?
What are the most important metrics for your business, the top 3 ones you look at on a day-to-day or month-to-month basis?
Obviously, LTV, right? It's like lifetime value of the customer in terms of your churn. Gross churn is really important. You don't want to have, it says bad breath is worse than no breath, right? And so it's like, you don't want people going out there and telling the rest of the market that I tried that product, it sucked, right? And so gross churn is important. And then we like more land and expand. So we don't care about the enterprise. We care less about that than what the customer can grow into over time. ability to expand revenue is very important. Customer happiness, right? So it's like, are they really referring you to others? Usage of the product is extremely important. Health, right? If you can have a way to communicate the health of your customer base in it, it ultimately gets reflected on churn, but you can fix that sometimes with terms or price. And so I think it's showing usage of the product, the value that the product understands is important.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
We've got like 2 minutes left, so unless someone has a really quick question, I want to be conscious of time. Okay, cool. Well, Elias, that was also like the fastest 60 minutes. Thank you so much for phoning in from home. I really appreciate you taking the time. Obviously, if any interest, actually, and I'll ask, I mean, your email is in the calendar invite, but if folks want to reach out post-COVID when Drift has budget again to purchase software, folks can reach out to ask questions, and obviously the other way around as well. But thank you again for taking the time, and thanks everybody else for coming on in various time zones.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you something in return. We have Drift for startups.
Yes.
So it's I think it's like drift.com/startups. Please use it. It's heavily discounted, and you guys get access to a larger product that you pay a lot less for it. And we want to help you succeed. So
it's actually, we just added it to our perks page. So you guys, if you want to go to the Notion page, it's up there. Please use it. It's a great product. I'm a huge fan.
Good luck, and tell some great stories, right? And this is the time. It's no better time to start a company but now. So go for it.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.